Hey there, witches, and welcome to Moonstone Witchery, the podcast where we talk about witchcraft and spirituality in a modern context. My name is Rian Lockard, and I am the head witch here at Moonstone Witchery, and I am super excited to be with you right now. This is my first podcast episode where I'm having video with it too. So if you want to watch me do a podcast with, just myself, you can head over to either my YouTube channel or I know some podcast platforms will host the video as well. I'm pretty sure Spotify does it. So just check out whatever platform you're on. But I got to tell you, I'm not really that exciting. I talk with my hands a lot. But aside from that, it's really just me here in my office. So feel free to watch or just feel free to listen. You can't really go wrong. I'm really excited to be here with you guys because I've been setting up my office. We've had a lot of changes over at Moonstone Witchery, as you may or may not know. We have moved to selling spelled candles along with our spelled oils. And just as a sidebar, I did this as part of like my obsession with like empowering people when it comes to witchcraft and spirituality. You know, the tenets of my brand here are compassion, education, empowerment, and inclusivity, right? And so based on that, everything I do fits into those four categories. And the empowerment piece is so important. It's really why I started on this path and why I actually started making this very podcast. And it's because I want people to stop being in a state of fear around their magic, being in a state of fear around their inner power. I want people to know, like, yes, you absolutely can do magic, like affect the trajectory of your life, influence the energy around you. Yes, you absolutely can, like take control, take charge, make everything belong to you. And we don't know that. We don't get taught that enough in our culture. And so you hear my wife out there doing something. And so I just really wanted to kind of make this space be specifically for all of those concepts and how to make you feel like you're allowed. You know, you're allowed to be you. You're allowed to want to engage with the unspoken energy field of all that is. You're allowed to want to maybe shift the focus of your world. And you're allowed to do that in ways that feel right to you. And you're allowed to access like this secret realm of like spirituality and the spiritual secrets and all the things that we have been sort of trained out of in our culture, like that we've been kind of not allowed to access. And I think it's important because the culture has been really designed, right, to trap us in a certain bubble. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. But one of the reasons I made all the candles, which you see behind me if you're watching the video, I made all these candles and I'm continuing to roll out more candles for several reasons. One of them was because the community spells I do can only get me so far, right? Like there's some very specific kinds of things that I wanted to offer, but they really are only very niche, like such as I have a success in business candle. Like that is a community spell on a large scale, maybe isn't going to fit for like couple hundred people who are going to want to opt into that spell. But for the people who it does fit for, it really fits for them. And it also might be something that they want to access when they want to access it, right? But the other portion of the reason why I'm making these candles is because like I really, truly want people to be able to feel confident in holding a spell, knowing it's safe, right? Knowing it will work and seeing the results, like setting the intention out and allowing it to come back to themselves the way that they want it to. I want you to have positive experiences with spell work. I want you to have positive experiences with witch work because you're safe. It's going to be okay. It's not as easy to do things wrong as we fear or think that it might be, right? So let's talk for today. I'm calling this one Defiance as Enlightenment because it's recently been hitting me that is a true thing. And now defiance in this terminology and for the sake of this broadcast is not the only right? Obviously, thing we need to become enlightened, nor does everyone who is enlightened have to be defiant. I don't think, although maybe, don't know. It's just an interesting concept though, and I really wanted to speak on it because there's so much stuff going on right now, guys. Like the world, like full stop, like just the world. And when I say that, you're going to be like, I know, right? Like what? Right? And so because of that, like it needs to be spoken about. I've been pretty upset about all these spiritual leaders and teachers who are saying and doing nothing. That's disturbing, and who are just kind of bypassing the whole experience or selling their programs as if nothing's going on. I mean, to me, if you work in this industry, you have an obligation to speak up and speak out. Spirituality is kind of one of the only placeholders of morality that is left in the modern world, quite frankly. I mean, we could say, like, we could have said that, like, and this has never really been true, but we could have said, right, that like lawyers, politicians, law enforcement, whatever, are managers of and directors of, and maybe in some way conductors of morality. However, one of the things that's bothering me the most recently is like, no, they're not. And not even just no, they're not, but like, yeah, we already kind of knew that. But no, they're not. And it's like the most gaslighting experience of all time ever. Like, there are laws, and these people, they're just disregarding the laws. And for me, with my neurodivergence and the ADHD the way it is, I just have a hard time when someone says one thing and completely does another thing. Like, that just breaks my brain. I just want to be like, hang on, everybody needs to stand still right now. Because let me point out how A plus B does not equal C. And I get almost paralyzed at those parts because I'm just like, how can we function if our actions and our words do not align? The definitions are off. It creates discordant energy, right? And I teach about this all the time. And when I'm analyzing people's spell work, or when I'm analyzing the petitions people want to write, or when I'm talking to somebody about a spell they did and what happened as a result, I have to look at like, okay, well, what was the intention? What was the spell? How did you do it? Because that's turning intangible, right, into something tangible that we're hoping will dispatch, right? And then it's like, how did you behave after you did it? Because all those energies have to really match in order for your spells to work, right? In order for your manifestations to be made manifest, the alignment has to be there. And if it's not there, if the energy of what you're trying to call forth does not exist in the whole way through, and then on the outcome side, you're sending mixed messages, and it's becoming incongruent, inconsistent, and like it's going to be muddy when it shows up. And I say this with caution because I know that people hear me say stuff like this and then they get all up in their heads, and then they just like become paralyzed, and then they just like don't do XYZ. Like they just don't do their witch work because they overthink it. They become afraid of it. They spiral out. The spiraling is very real. And here's the thing. If you don't do the things, you can't read the results. So you don't know, oh, okay, like this showed up and I was feeling that way, and that's why it showed up like this. Or, oh, like I see what happened. Like I didn't close XYZ loophole. Like we have to be willing to regard our work and our intentions and our outcomes with an element of stepping back and observing and not taking things personally, and like getting into some type of space with ourselves where we're just like freaking out and like not okay and like getting really upset. Like part of being a witch is like being a scientist in a way, where a lot of these things are experiments and we're just fine-tuning experiments. And in order to be able to do that, we cannot take results of experiments seriously, or not seriously, but we can't take them personally. It's all just information. If we could all start just like viewing things as information, I think that would like be world changing. Honestly, there'd be so much less conflict because whenever I'm regarding a situation or circumstance, almost to the annoyance of the people in my life, quite honestly, I'm always looking at it as just information, and I'm actually always just reading the energy. And this can come off frustrating for people because I will be very like, well, wait a second, why'd you say this if it's that? Right? Like that's annoying, I'm sure. But I have to make sense of what's going on with the energy versus the words, or the actions versus what was thought to be being done, because if they don't match, well, there's the source of the conflict or the hardship or whatever. And I'm always like, well, if we can find where the wires got crossed, we can uncross them and everything will be fine and everything will work better and it'll be just easier. So, okay. So the defiance, let's get back on track here, Ryan. So I want us to talk about defiance as a form of enlightenment because I don't remember where I was either teaching or speaking or talking about this, but I was kind of outlaying like, here's why we're in this predicament to a degree, okay? And I blame everything on capitalism and monotheism because, they're siblings. They might even be fraternal twins, honestly, because capitalism and monotheism really just hold hands with each other. They're essentially exactly the same structure. They just have different faces. Those different faces are just mildly different, quite honestly. And so what happens with capitalism, right, is there's a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid is the person with all of the money and the resources and the power. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But then there's a structure that has to be in place so that that individual can hold and keep all of that. And that structure is super important because that structure is where the rest of the world lives. Somewhere on that continuum, from the bottom of that pyramid up to the top of that pyramid, that's where we all are, and we're tossed in there and we're given rules about life. Now, here's the other part of it, right? Monotheism is the same way. There's a guy in like a pretty dress and a silly hat at the top, and there are tiers of access, right, within the structure of the church dynamic, and then all the way down to the bottom till just like the congregants and like the people who believe in the faith and all that stuff. Both of these structures, okay, offer you guidelines for how to exist. And this is super important because the population is so large, right? We need guidelines for how to exist. The problem is that these guidelines went way beyond just like, don't murder people and like, don't steal, right? Like they went to like such extremes, and those extremes have been in place for so long that they've just become facts in our brains. And this is an issue because what if those facts don't make any sense, right? And what if those facts are actually detrimental? Because the thing that we have to consider, and the thing we're watching play out in front of us in the world stage right now, is the people at the top. What if they are consciously aware of the ways in which they're keeping the rest of us, right, contained in these little boxes, because for us to be out of them is a problem for them. We already know this, but it's still important to talk about it and remind ourselves that this is what's going on. Because one of the reasons that people are having a hard time here is, well, many of the reasons. First of all, the thing I was just talking about before, like you're saying this, but you're doing that. It doesn't make any sense. And like the structure has been in place because it has made sense to a degree up until recently. Like this American dream. The American dream is an entirely capitalist structure. It's like get married, have children. Get married, go to college, have children, or is it go to college first? Whatever. Do these things, right? Go to college, get married, have kids, buy a house, right? But see, over the course of our lifetimes, right, we haven't been able to do those things to the same effect that like the boomers above us have. Like getting married now costs like as much as a house, going to college also costs as much as a nicer house. Having children is a whole situation, and we have really decimated the concept of the family structure in our current culture, which I'm going to talk about more in a second. Buying a house costs as much as like buying 3 houses, right? Like it is completely ridiculous at this point. We're not living in a world, right, where we can put our coin in the slot and get the little prize out of the machine. It's just not even possible anymore. So we're all out here doing the things they told us to do and not yielding the same results. And we're all playing by the rules. But see, here's the other part of capitalism. Capitalism has said to you, like, all of this stuff is possible. So if you don't have it, something's wrong with you. Because the system works. Look how happy these rich people are. Look how pretty these models are. Look at this TV show where the perfect family exists and no one's ever arguing. So if you don't have that life, well, then you're doing capitalism wrong. And that's what it's been telling us. And we are so primed and ready to feel shame because, again, the culture, and here's where monotheism comes in and is a little bit helpful, right? The culture is like, hey, you basically suck as a default. And so whoever you naturally are is wrong. You have to be, thinner, lighter skinned, definitely not queer, definitely not like anything different. You have to be like successful and okay with like a corporate kind of job. Like you have to just do all these things, take all these steps. And if you don't want those things, if you are different than those things, you have some fatal flaws that you should really be upset about and atone for. And like the church goes even farther to be like, you are all sinners. You all just suck from the jump. Like, what are you going to do about it? And so these are all problematic things that get baked into us because the culture is hardwired like this. And when you're born, you're just kind of like, okay, whoa, I exist. And that's why we cry for the first year of our lives. Whoa, I exist. Okay, what's going on here? Let me now learn how to navigate this world. Let me learn what everything is. Let me touch everything. Let me explore. Let me understand the basic laws of physics here. And then it's like you get a little older and it's like, well, where do I fit into my peer group? Like, where do I belong? And as we're getting oriented to this world, we're intaking like, well, what are the rules? Like, how do we function? And this is where culture becomes important because the culture that we're reared in, it teaches us how the world works, okay? And so people from different cultures just have an innate understanding of how their world works in that culture. And this is why other cultures are super cool. And it's fun to learn and to study other cultures. America doesn't really have a culture. Our culture is capitalism. I mean, really think about it, right? The things that define a culture are like the way the family unit interacts, the food, the celebrations, the rituals, the holidays, the way a community interfaces with each other. Those are the defining factors of a culture. American culture is non-homogenized, which is, positive in some ways, or theoretically it's positive, but because it's non-homogenized, meaning there's not just one set thing, we don't have a default culture, and our default culture is just America. And America is just really capitalism, because if you've noticed this, you used to be able to travel to a different town in the country or go to a different state or whatever, and it would be a different place. And like the thing that kind of irks my spirit now, and I'm going to sound like an old person probably by complaining about this, but the thing that kind of irks my spirit at this point is like, you can go anywhere and there's like an Applebee's, a Walmart, and like a Target, like there are the same things. There's Toyota car dealerships everywhere. There's Barnes & Noble, which please go support Barnes & Noble, or all bookstores. Independent bookstores actually are better. But you know what I'm saying to you? Like the grocery stores all have the same items. There's CVS, like the same things are everywhere. And they're all sort of set up in the same way. So even though you're in a different state, in a different part of the country, anywhere you go, like it's kind of the same. And so that's the homogenization of American culture, is there's capitalism. It's like, what are the products I can buy? Like, what are the items? Like, where's the store that I'm familiar with? And so in that way, we have somewhat of a culture, but it's all based on products and items and money and shopping. And it's not really based on anything else. We don't have a way that we all treat our family. We don't have a way that we all celebrate certain holidays. I mean, I guess we have like the 4th of July, but as America, as the culture, right? There isn't like, here's how you treat people and here's how you exist in the world. And that is a failure, in my opinion, because it creates a sense of isolation within the individual that is incredibly hard to overcome, especially when the culture is capitalism, and capitalism is telling you you're bad and wrong and flawed. Like you need to strive to look like this person. You need to strive to be like that person. You need to want the same things that we're telling you that you want. You need to like seek to have like the family unit, the house with the fence. I know I always go back to this, but it's because it's been so implanted into us, and so many people really struggle when like, what if I don't want those things? Like, what if I am not that person? And this is a hard thing to ask and answer yourself. And so many people spend their whole life just feeling not good enough because they are not the thing that the culture has told them they're supposed to be, that capitalism has told them that they're supposed to be. Because again, I just really want to argue there is no culture in this country. And that is coming back to haunt us in a major way here and now, because with a lack of culture, there's a lack of community. And community is the most important thing for survival. Like on a fundamental level, like go back like thousands of years, like those people lived through the stuff they lived through because they had each other. And in that community, there was rules, there was ways of behaving, there was designated jobs that people had, there was just a certain amount of respect for some individuals. Like it just mattered that you had community, even on a foundational level of just huddling together for warmth. It mattered. So the fact that we don't have that kind of a community, a culture built into us is really harmful to us now, because when we're lost, when we're lonely, when we feel bad and wrong, we don't know who to turn to, and we don't have people to lean on, and we do feel isolated, and then our isolation makes us feel shame, and we already feel shame as a default, and we don't know how to connect to other people. And right now, the lack of our ability to lean on each other is directly proportional to how hard it is, how hard of a time we're currently having with making a change in the world, or standing up and being organized enough to force bad things that are happening to stop happening, right? And so I want to talk more about this, because if we can start to see that we're living in a situation and a circumstance that has predetermined the rules of operation for us, those rules are, for the most part, and by design, unattainable to us. We can't get the house. We can't get the car. We can't go to college, all of us. Or if we do, we're in debt for forever. And we're not even using our degree. We maybe don't even want the kids. But, so those rules are unattainable on the most part. Or if we try to attain them, we're stuck on that hamster wheel for forever and we can't get anywhere. So when we're operating in that situation, it's treading water, it's depressing, and it's depleting. But what we are doing is we're feeding the machine, okay? We're feeding the machine. We're keeping those people really wealthy because we've been taught, culturally conditioned even, to think to ourselves like, oh, I know what will help. If I buy something, I will feel better. And this is no one's fault. This is just what they've done to us. If I buy the next thing, I will feel better. And the next thing is always ready and always waiting and always telling us it will help everything. And we get lost in that, and we accumulate stuff instead of experiences, and we accumulate things instead of connections with people. And everything that we do to try to satiate the goals set for us by the culture takes us farther away from ourselves. And this is why I've spent all 8 seasons of this podcast so far just ranting about how terrible capitalism is. And this is also, sidebar, one of the reasons I like Jesus so much. I mean, Jesus also hated the shit out of capitalism. He really didn't like it. He really was like, get your goods and wares out of the chart. Like, stop being like obsessed with money. Stop putting yourselves above other people. And he was so intense about it because he could see that it's so far away, right, from the unity and the oneness that we are supposed to be gravitating towards. And you can see how having a culture, having a community brings us closer to oneness and that collective unity. When you have a community, it's all of you together working for a common good. When you are isolated and an individual, you are so much farther away from the collective consciousness that you can barely feel or touch it after a period of time. You feel so alone. And in many ways, you are so alone. And that's the point, right? Like, they want to get you alone with a bunch of stuff around you, but no real people. And our move towards the collective is really a move towards enlightenment. Enlightenment is all about like seeing like what's actually going on. Enlightenment is like, whoa, okay, I get it. Like, there's oneness, like we're all the same spirit, just kind of incarnated as different versions of itself. And I am you and you are me, and all of those things that we all really know about, but many people don't live inside of that awareness. And even people who do live inside of that awareness will blip in and out of it at times. We can't help it. We're incarnated as a singular being. So of course, at times, we will really be that singular being. And at other times, we will really be merged with other people. So when we are stuck in this like capitalist culture and we're very isolated and alone, but we're playing by all the rules and we're not having the happiness that they said that we would, but we're blaming ourselves for that, it's really hard in that situation, right, to achieve much of anything that is spiritually profound or really spiritually elevating for yourself. Because like I just said, like there's such polar opposites. And monotheism keeps it that way as well, right? You can't talk to anyone specific or God or spirits. If you want to, you're bad, you're the devil. If you say you can, you're a witch, you're possessed, right? Any merging with the spiritual plane is considered to be evil, bad, and wrong, which is literally, again, the exact opposite of the truth of it all. Merging with the spiritual plane is the point. Becoming aware, right, of the way that God or whatever spirit, the universe lives inside of us, and that it is in me and it is outside of me. I am it and it is me. And like, this is this harmonious relationship. Like, I'm just swimming in it and I'm breathing it in and I'm breathing it out. Like, being aware of that is enlightenment. Like, living in that space where you can actively like touch and feel and communicate with and be the spiritual life force energy of all that is the point. That's what Jesus was talking about, BT dubs. But the problem is that like they don't want us to know that. And it's like, well, why? Well, because they can't control us. They can't tell us what to do. They can't say, give me all your money. Because churches and capitalism are very much the same thing. And so our desire to in some way, shape, or form. Because if you're here and you're listening to this, if you're in my groups, if you're in my academy, if you have bought one of my candles or done spells or read a book on witchcraft or Googled like, am I a witch, or what is a witch, or do spells really work, or whatever you've done that has brought you to this point, you are already, okay, in this space of being ready, willing, and able to hear what I'm talking about today. And you are already doing a huge thing. It requires defiance to do these things. It requires defiance to be the person who is like, I don't want that life that they told me I'm supposed to want. I don't want it. And further, I reject them for even suggesting it. Like, that's the next step right on that. Like the ladder that defiance has that leads us to a more enlightened space. And again, there's many ladders, there's many forms of enlightenment. Like, it's not just one thing, but when we're climbing that, there's steps along the way. And so to realize with yourself, like, I don't really vibe with this. I don't really vibe with that. I don't think that I want that for my life. Right there is such an amazing and, reality shattering thought that I just want to stop and recognize every single one of us who has had that thought, because we have been programmed to never have that thought. And so for us to have had the thought and for us to have taken action upon the thought is profound unto itself. It's a big deal. Wherever you are on your own journey that has happened since you had the thought, I applaud you for it, because everything you do after that is important, and it is breaking the simulation that you've been placed into. And it is doing that in search of something called truth or alignment or God or spirit or just knowledge and understanding, like real knowledge and real understanding. Every time you make a decision that is about removing yourself from what we've been just told to be, think, do, or feel, and every time you implement something different in your life based on that decision to move away from it, that every time you do that is profound, it is significant, it is important, and it influences the collective. It does, because it can't not influence the collective. Because if we are all united, we are all together, we are all one form of consciousness, just experimenting as different versions of ourselves, of itself, we are always influencing each other. Just as a sidebar for that, if your anxiety's been terrible recently, that's because we're all influencing each other. The collective energy field is just, it's wild out there right now. And if you've had to simmer way down, or if you've been kind of in a funk or whatever, go easy on yourself, friend, because you're swimming in a sea of just the most jacked up energy ever. And you didn't create it, so you can't really fix it, but you are very aware of it because you can't help but be, because you're energy sensitive. And it is part of the fact that you made this decision a while ago that you're gonna break the facade. You're gonna break the spell that the culture, the capitalism culture, tried to place upon you, or did place upon you at some point or another. And in breaking that spell, you have become aware. No one ever said, by the way, that awareness or enlightenment is easy or fun or just the greatest time ever. No one ever said that. I don't think anyone ever said that. The fact is, though, that some of us can't help but search for answers. And some of us just want to know answers, even if knowing those answers kind of sucks a little bit for us, which frequently it really weirdly does. And so you've made this choice. You're like, that thing doesn't fit. Maybe I'm a witch. Maybe I have psychic gifts. Maybe I'm interested in learning about these things that they told me I wasn't supposed to want to learn about. And maybe I'm going to let myself do that. And especially right now, see, here's some of the hope that's in the fuckery and the chaos of what's happening in this world right now. Some of the hope in it is the fact that the more that we kind of break through and just do the things that we want to do, the weaker the foundation of the story becomes. Because in order for that foundation, right, to stay really strong, it needs all that reinforcement of people participating in maintaining it. And, you know, another word we can use for this is egregore. And egregores are very trendy right now. And an egregore is like a collective energy field. It's not a conscious being. It is a being made of consciousness, okay? So an egregore, whatever you want to call them, however people pronounce it, an egregore is a being made of consciousness, which is different than a conscious being. A conscious being is autonomous, right? Meaning it makes its own decisions and it has its own free will. A being made of consciousness is subservient to the will of all of the consciousness is. Consciousness? Well, how does one pluralize consciousness? It is subservient to the will of those who participate in it and what they are doing and how they're directing it. So the egregore, I will switch around how I pronounce this word just so I don't get messages about it. The egregore, it is shapeless, it is formless, right? And yet it exists as all energetic things do, right? It exists and it is persuasive for the workings of the culture. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent and I don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to try to consolidate the description of an egregore here. Brands are egregores. Okay, so think about like a designer. Like think about like remember when everyone had to have a Coach bag? So like the Coach bag was an egregore. Coach in general for like whatever years those were. Like what was it, like 2008 to 2015? I don't know. I'm bad at time, so if my years are off, don't hate. The Coach egregore was like, oh my God, Coach is so cute and trendy. And like everybody wanted to like be, well, not everybody wanted to be, but the people who were participant in the egregore of Coach wanted to be that vibe. They wanted to be the girl with the Coach bag. You know, they wanted to like pull out their Coach wallet or have their Coach wristlet at the club. And they wanted to be like, yeah, it's Coach. I just got it, whatever. So that egregore created a vibe or an attainable sort of like a prototype or an archetype. Let's go with that. It created like a momentary, a fleeting, like a transient archetype for people who were in the culture at the time. They wanted to hold and embody that archetype. Right? And you can look back over trends. Like right now, I would say there's like, and we're coming out of it, which makes me happy, but there's like a millennial gray egregore for our homes and our like neighborhoods. And everything has to look very sterilized and like really minimalist and very toned down and very like lacking in personality. And that's on purpose because that's what the egregore is. Somehow that became chic. Dressing babies in neutral tones. I saw this article where this lady refused to have bright colors for her kids' toys. They all of her kids' toys were like browns and beige and gray. And I was like, what does this do to a person? But I digress. So the egregores, these energy beings, and I'm going to say beings in quotes, they create these mini pockets within cultures that designate mindsets, belief systems, aesthetics. They are created by the collective, by enough people within that collection of people. If enough of them decide that they all like the same thing, then that egregore exists, and it's kind of alive because all these people are feeding an energy into it. And it's kind of significant because it is created by so much living energy that everybody agrees that it's got a whole vibe unto itself. Sororities, fraternities, sports fans and sports teams, those are definite egregores, right? Like they are definitely made up of a huge collective of people with a similar energy going to a similar place. Politicians and the political circumstance in our world right now, that's become a very interesting example of an egregore, because you got these people with their cool red hats. They are an egregore, and their egregore, you immediately can feel it, see it, smell it, you know about it. When we, as people over here, decide on our own in our own life before all this even happened or during it or whatever, I don't really think I vibe with what the culture's telling me I'm supposed to be. Like in my personal journey, I was like, I don't want a desk job. I can't even fathom that. And I don't want to be a Christian. I'm not that. Like I was very like, no, I'm a gay, feminist, liberal witch, right? So I broke a bunch of those rules, I am never going to be the things. My inability to conform, my choice not to conform, because for a while, if you know some of my history, I was married to a man. I tried the capitalism, didn't get very far. But my choices to not participate in the capitalist cultural preconditioning is defiance, right? So when I am choosing myself, I am being highly defiant to what I've been taught. I'm being defiant against capitalism. Now, when enough of us become defiant in the same way, we might not see, right, immediate results in a way we might want on a large scale, but please trust and believe that it is there on a smaller scale. The egregore of those with the red hats on their head is slowly leaking energy from itself, right? And the egregore of, oh fuck no, has been growing in energy. Now, please refer to some of my previous podcast episodes about this so you can understand that it's harder for the counter egregore to, at this stage, become as concentrated and influential as the hat one, because of the fact that there's just not enough organization. We're not unified and organized enough. The lack of community has been somewhat of an issue, okay? But it's still happening. Our defiance is shaping things. Because imagine with me a world in which no one was defiant. We call that a utopia in some ways, but what it really is a lot of people who are willing and able, because for many of us, it's not always just a choice to be defiant. it is just our own default setting. Like the assimilation is just not possible for many of us. I mean, if we're born queer, if we're born with any other skin tone, if we're born neurodivergent, if we're born with a, cynical mindset, if we're born, scientists, like we cannot with ease participate in these preconceived concept of what we're supposed to be. What has shifted, though, is many of us have stopped feeling bad about the fact that we don't match that, and instead have chosen to be like, yeah, why would I want to match that? And this is what I'm talking about with defiance being a hugely important step on that ladder to enlightenment. Because to look at something and to say, this doesn't work, what is it doing to the collective? To keep the collective in mind and to refuse to participate, right, in the systems of oppression that have been set up and put into place, that is evolutionary. Not just revolutionary, but I said evolutionary. And the reason I'm saying that is because in order for things to change, they have to evolve. And when things don't have the ability to adapt anymore to circumstances, that is what evolution is. I am no longer able to adapt to my environment, so I will change, and the rest of it can either adapt to me or not. And when we refuse to accept these things that make no sense to us, we are part of the evolution of the embodied collective, meaning like people. I call it the embodied collective because I really, I don't ever want to lose sight of the fact that we really are all interconnected, but we are here embodied. And there's such a duality in that is so important to keep at the forefront. Because if we overreach and we say, well, we're all one, well, then we're spiritually bypassing everything and holding no one accountable. But if we underreach and we think that we're each just this one individual, then we don't care enough about everybody else. So as humanity evolves and changes, because that evolution is not just physical, like evolution, especially when it comes to people, is it's personality, it's brain processing, it's emotions, it's thoughts, it's interactivity with one another. And I'm sure it's like our physical traits too, obviously. But our choices to stop participating creates a new way of being in the world. It just shifts everything. And when we are defiant against systems that keep people down or harmed or oppressed or whatever it is, we are saying that model doesn't work anymore. Build us a new one. So the fact that you are spiritual and witchy instead of like Christian and buttoned up, you've walked out into this enlightenment space. Because remember, anything that brings us closer to being unified as the collective is a facet. It's one of the points of the stars of enlightenment. When you are like, I'm not going to follow your script, even something just as like dyeing your hair a color or being willing to wear all the jewelry that you want to wear, breaking social constructs is so important because that is what changes us. And it's very important because as much as we are the embodiment of the collective, we are each individuals as well. And the individuality must be allowed to exist. And so on the cycle of things, people go along with a cultural conditioning until it stops working, and then they rise up against it and they choose something else until that stops working, and then they go along and then it stops working and they rise up against it. And we are in that tidal pool. We are in that ebb and flow, and we are making these decisions right now to, within our personal life, just not be okay with like the status quo anymore. And in that collective scale where those egregores live, to stop feeding the ones that really are harmful on a bigger scale. Because as much as I'm always like, why am I incarnated right now? Oh my God, like what was I thinking? At the same time, I kind of like that we're in a time where we are really pushing for like, stop being dicks to people, guys. Like we're really pushing for like, embrace everybody, bring everybody into the fold. Like let people love who they love. Like let people look like what they look like. Let people like identify how they identify. Let people worship whatever the fuck they want to worship. Like we are in that space where we're moving towards that. I really do appreciate being in that space. I know it's hard for us to feel very defeated in that space. And I just want to praise us for being the ones who are not stuck in the old space. Like for the collective to change, it requires a lot of us to be here. And so if you're like me, wondering why the hell you're here right now, you're a contributing factor, okay? Because Jesus showed up, monotheism happened, and you know monotheism is not enlightened because the guy at the top of monotheism, number one, is a guy. Number two, their God is made of ego. Do not worship false idols. No one can come to heaven except through me. He's jealous and vengeful. He's murdering the whole planet a couple times over. He's yelling at people. The monotheistic God is one supreme being, which is like the most narcissistic capitalist kind of thing ever. There is one conscious being, and he's pissed at everybody, and he wants us to serve and worship him. That is the farthest point away from collective consciousness that we can really get. And so this is how you know it's the other side of the binary. And so on this cycle that we've been in the ebb and flow with, right, we're ebbing or flowing, whatever, away from the patriarchal, monotheistic, capitalistic default. And we're going into a unity consciousness, like kind of like genderless, thank God, like love is love, right? Kind of atmosphere. Those are the two sides. When this cycle started with the really like the men and patriarchy, monotheistic thing, whatever, there's one dude who set off the trajectory, right? The Jesus of it all, or Muhammad, or whatever, all the monotheistic religions. One God, one, and it's male. On this side where this change is tilting, in order to counterbalance that, right, there will not be one person. There will be many people, because we're moving from the one supreme being to the knowledge, like all of us though. And so your existence here, it actually really does matter. And that's not just like a freaking quote in like some, office manager's office wall on like a poster or something. It's not like some meme. Like it's like you actually do matter, because we are trying to counterbalance this 2,000 year cycle that's been happening and evolve, right, to the next one. And so it will be many of us, and every one of us has to be defiant. Every one of us has to be against what has been. And I don't know about you, but I've always gotten a lot of shit in my life for being defiant. I have been called difficult my whole life. People have had a hard time with me for forever. I've had a hard time with myself for forever. But I also know that I just like refuse to do things that don't make sense to me and don't work for me. And I refuse to participate in situations that are harmful and effed up. And like, I refuse to not say something about it. And I just can't and won't. That defiance that makes people kind of like stressed out to be around me probably is why I exist now. And you have defiance too, because if you're here listening to me, a part of you has thrown up your middle finger at the world and been like, F this is stupid. And you know, you might have 10 middle fingers thrown up right now. You might be way on this path. You might be like, yeah, exactly. When you're facing this like nihilistic, like existential dread of like, why do I exist? It is not just me placating you by saying like, no, but it matters that you exist. Because we need that collective of counter energy to be defiant AF right now in the face of all of this to create something else, because this is just a mess and a nightmare. It's not working. It's proven it's not working. It's fallen to its knees. It's going to go. But our egregore, right? Our way of being, like our realizations, we are the more evolved, and I don't want to say more, and I don't want to create a binary, and I don't want to be like judgy like that, but like we are the evolutionary next step, culturally, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually on that cycle. We just are. Because if you go 2,000 years before the monotheism kicked in, it was very pagan, and it was very much more like we're going towards now. I'm not saying that this is the end game, because you know it's just gonna probably keep on cycling around different spots on that labyrinth. But because the history repeats itself, we know our time is right now. And this is why it is so important for you to radically believe the things you believe and radically do the things you do, radically shirk every single expectation that the culture has put upon you, and to just not care. Be like the most. Be like the gayest, most feminist, most artistic, most like queer, most loud, most like dressed, most whatever you want to be. Because that is the energy that is coming to life. That is the energy that all of us, because it's not going to be just one guy, it's going to be all of us, have to hold and carry to bring in what's coming, which is what's better. So defiance is really, in a lot of ways, a very spiritual way to be. It requires intelligence and insight and bravery and willingness to defy what you've always been taught and told. And that comes from a deep place of being very connected to the truth and the light and the knowledge and the understanding of what really holds us together. So that's what I had to say about that today. Thank you for being here with me. And go on my website and look at my cool candles. They all have glitter on them. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.